Alright, hey guys, this is Idea Coach, he's the coach, she's Rome. Today I'm going to be reviewing a documentary I just got to see, and that's Ice-T's From Nothing to Something, The Art of Hip Hop. Okay, for those who don't know, Ice-T is a rapper who was claimed to fame about killing the police back in the late 80s and early 90s. He had 7 gold records, which was a very, very big deal at the time when hip hop was really on the underground, especially on the West Coast. He's been relatively quiet for the past, 15 years, up until probably 2010, 2009, we had some verbal jousting with Soulja Boy and telling Soulja Boy to go eat a dick. Since that time, Ice-T has been campaigning to make a documentary for the new school of rappers about what their history is and where it comes from. And a few months ago, this movie was released. It kind of tanked in the theaters, and therefore I got to see it on misinfo.tv. I'm gonna say this. I'll say if I was to give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, I give it a thumbs up. But let me explain a couple of things that were very off about the movie, about the documentary. Ice-T claims to go through this. He starts off trying to go through this linear process of where hip hop came from. Now, for those who don't know, that would probably start with a guy named Kool Herc, who has now passed away. So you can't have an interview with him. But he has an interview with a lot of the old school rappers from New York. Ice-T's a West Coast artist. From all into New York, through all the 5 boroughs, you get to see guys like Grandmaster Cash, KRS-One, a number of the old Dougie Fresh, a number of the old school New York hip hop artists back in the day, and they talk about what they used to do, how they cut their the music, because all these things are done with samples. And he pretty much goes from New York. There's a brief time with Eminem in Detroit and Kanye West, who's from Chicago, but I doubt it was filmed in Chicago. And then it ends on the West Coast. That right there is probably the biggest problem with the movie. There is no Southern rappers, period. I'm not talking about the big ones, or the ones that have respect, countrywide. There's no Outkast. There's other people who've made big impact in the South. There's no Goody Mob. There's no Cash Money records. There's no Limit record artists featured at all. There's no Nelly. So the entire South is completely ignored in this whole body of hip hop documentary that Ice-T was trying to conduct. The other problem is that probably within an hour of watching this about hour and a half, hour and 40-minute documentary, is you understand something. Ice-T had a beginning, he had a middle, he had a message, but he does not have an ending to this. I felt that this documentary was actually very, very incomplete in a lot of ways. They go to New York, but there's no LL Cool J. And for those of you guys who are a little bit too young, LL Cool J and Ice-T have problems back in the past. But fuck, man, that was over 20 years ago. I'm pretty sure they could have squashed and had a sit down talk at some point within this documentary. There's no talk of Big Pun. There's a brief thing with the Wu-Tang Clan, but it's only Raekwon and Ghostface Killah. There's no RZA. That was the head of the Wu-Tang Clan. And there's no talking about the production when it comes to the beats and the sampling. Now, for a lot of guys who don't know, especially when it comes to West Coast hip hop, there is, rap comes from basically 3 main genres of music: funk, jazz, and soul. Now, funk was much more of a West Coast thing. That's how Dr. Dre's The Chronic is just pretty much a Parliament Funkadelic Gucci Collins ripoff when it comes to production. But there's no talk about jazz and its influence to the hip hop community of those who is talking about the documentary. Another thing is, Nas's dad is a jazz player. So when Nas was being interviewed, I thought he was going to talk more about his father and talk about how jazz really influenced him in that aspect of music, wanted him to become an artist, because a lot of Nas's earlier work is very, very jazz based. You know, there's hip hop cuts in it, but it's very, very heavy jazz. Illmatic is a very, very jazz album. Even when it comes to the harder drum beats, those like jazz drums. So there's no talk about that. There's no talk about sampling and the process of sampling back in the day, because before the Beastie Boys, I believe their second album, you could sample for free. And then Beastie Boys, they sampled so much that they had to have like copyright laws and had to get clearances for different samples. No talk about this whatsoever. And there's a number of you know, Northern Californian artists, Too Short, E40, who are just missing from this documentary. I felt that if this was to be done correctly, I feel that would have really like changed the game with this documentary, as if they did this whole documentary, right? And at the very end, the cameraman is Soulja Boy. You know, there should be some sort of talk between the new school and the old school. One thing I did like about this documentary, I was very, very scared about it when I heard about all these old artists, and I saw them in other different YouTube interviews that were more recent, is that at least none of these guys looked like has-beens. At least, you know, maybe because there's so many different old school artists coming at you, MC Lights in it, and you're really thinking like, man, is this motherfucker gonna be talking about some shit that no one cared about maybe 10 years ago, or someone who, you know, fucked them over on a record deal? There's none of that. Thank God. I'm very happy that the old school artists, they all look in a very positive and prestigious like aura to them. You know, they look like what they should look like. What I would love to have is this be some sort of type of trilogy where you would have the documentary in which it took place, then you'd have the dialogue between the old school artists and the new school artists. And there should be, you know, something, I don't want people to talk about dead rappers so much, but yeah, like I said, no one was talking about Tupac, you could have the Outlaws. No one was talking about Biggie, you could have Junior Mafia. You know, someone from the Wu-Tang Clan could talk about Old Dirty Bastard. The Lost Boys talking about Freaky Tom. No talk about that. Cameron talking about Big L. There's no talk about this, you know. And speaking of Cameron, there was another rapper along with Busta Rhymes and Fat Joe who've been through all these different eras. Same thing with the Lops, who've been through all these things with all the different eras over time, that just kind of stayed in the game and kept rolling, you know, especially for Cameron. I don't understand how come he wasn't part of this. You know, Lil Wayne, whether you like him, whether you dislike him, whether you like his, you know, his 2012 style, you like his 2006 style more, the motherfucker's been around since the 90s. And he should be talking about like how the game changed, you know, legal issues that, you know, Cash Money did have, and still do have with their production and with their other former artists on Cash Money Records. No talks about this whatsoever. So in a lot of ways, it's actually very, very incomplete. And to really kind of top it off, I think if there's to keep this thing going, would be the rappers who were caught for like maybe like 8 years ago or a couple of years ago. They're not really relevant at this day and age. And what were the mistakes that are being made? Someone like Mims, Rich Boy, these kind of artists where, you know, they were big for a minute. You know, another way, Fabulous, you know, they're big for a minute and then, you know, wherever maybe the game changed, maybe something didn't happen where they thought this would be part of a new wave and never came through. So, in a lot of ways, I would like people to watch this. Eminem and Rakim really talk about in detail the technical aspect of writing a rhyme. You know, Eminem goes off and says, like, you know, when he hears something or he has an idea in his head, instead of writing the words, he put dots representing the syllables. And Rakim does the exact same thing. There's actually another rapper who did something similar, where there's actually completely different progress to algorithms and stuff like that. That's pretty interesting. But there's only 3 of those artists talked about that, and then you never actually see them get to do it. Eminem was actually very, very careful when you think about how just lyrical this guy is, where he talked about having 2 bars make a rhyme, but inside those 2 bars, like in the middle somewhere, there would be words that rhymed anyhow that went along with the other with the other rhyme. And Eminem, I don't like him so much today, but his first 2 albums were just stellar. And speaking of lyricists, where's Cannabis? There's no Cannabis or anything like that. So when we're talking about like guys who are very happy with their skills, it just seemed to be like a collage of people of the past. And it was kind of strange to have Snoop Dogg end it all, seeing that he has not really been that relevant in the rap game as a solo artist for quite some time. I mean, he had that Drop It Like It's Hot song. He had the R&B, like Gangsta and Blues album, you know. But no one really cared about it. I mean, this is Snoop Dogg, who's now Snoop Lion, but it was just a situation where I think it could have ended like, I could think about 100 different artists ending that documentary outside of Snoop Dogg. So, like I said, the documentary is free to watch on misinfo.tv, which I'm pretty sure you can probably check out on YouTube as well at this point. I recommend you go and watch it. However, there are some things that really stand out that could have been really elaborated on and put together a little bit more coherently. Other than that, guys, that's my review. Take care.